Hello everyone! The dog, Dr. Respect, has finally made a comeback after so long, and man, is he better than ever. Well, not really. Today in this video, I'm gonna talk about his most recent stream, where he addressed the whole drama and what really happened. Where his stream, it was actually called The Truth, a 6-hour long stream called The Truth. Well, it's not really all about the drama, because he talks about the drama for the first 30 or 40 minutes, but in the rest, it's just playing Black Ops 6, like the beta. And when you think about it, the best comeback you make as a creator or a streamer, where you have the worst stuff ever alleged against you, is probably good to make like a response video, apology video, but he didn't do that. Instead, the dog went on a live stream to just like throw everything out there with very little evidence and just talked about the whole thing, the whole story, and why it's like a hit piece against him. The whole story is. And I'm gonna be honest, this whole stream like of him coming back and talking about it felt very bizarre. First off, I have to mention now, because like it really does cloud my opinion on this, is I feel like his whole response is very emotional, coming from the heart. So when he talks about like very specific stuff where there's not a lot of proof about it, like on screen, or we doesn't even show it, it's hard to entirely take his word or believe him as credible. First off, he was already at a horrible start with that whole confession being on Twitter, where immediately it kind of killed the story in the sense that there was no more room for research. I mean, he admitted it, and then he went on vacation. What more could you possibly want? Even in my own videos about this whole story, I was like, there's no way he's coming back to streaming. Because like the whole story about him is so awful, and he did say, he's going on vacation. There's no way he could possibly make a comeback, or even clear up the air on what actually happened. But I was wrong, because he did make a comeback. But one of the first things that tilted me to being like, I'm not sure if he's 100% in the head correctly, is that he said, in his original confession, he edited the word minor back and forth to trick journalists, as he said, to bait them.
You also said the word minor, Cody. I even made sure that word was emphasized in my statement, edited, etc., just to make sure these so-called journalists would pick up on it. And boy, oh boy, did they ever, champs.
And this is the first thing that led me to believe that Dr. Respect is going down the path of being a grifter, where he's very bitter about everything, and any mention of like this whole story, this whole drama, he responds to it by being very bitter, very aggressive, like fuck you, instant ban. Not only because like that's the natural path for him, with his career being in the water, but second of all, how deluded do you have to be to use that reason of like, editing the word minor to trick journalists as a reason for why you did it? Like that's a very, very heavy stretch. I don't know what convinced you that that was a good idea. This next part I took offense to, because around the 28-minute mark, he basically says fuck you to every commentary channel for like spreading the rumor around and doing no research. Despite the fact like he himself allowed no room for research when he put that confession out there. So how much could you dig into and try to play devil's advocate when there's just nothing else to the story? That's why I think now, looking back, the worst thing that he did was try to take a vacation. I mean, I know why he did it for his own mental health, but when you watch the stream now, he clearly has a lot of stuff to say that sounds somewhat convincing. But again, all the impact of what he said is lost by how emotional he sounds, and that this whole story is a bit dead, being like months back. And some of the stuff he says, as I'll show later in the video, does sound interesting. So it would have been good to have this, but like way before, in the whole beginning of this whole drama. One interesting part that he mentioned was how the lawsuit back in 2020, where he got banned and taken off the platform, was that the lawsuit was caused by, him sexting a minor. Well, that was a story, but it didn't fully go through because the judge didn't find what he did as being wrong or illegal. And he said, his own story, he said that Twitch's safety team looked at the messages between him and the Twitch user on Whispers and said that they found nothing wrong with it.
Twitch's trust and safety team, the same employees that decided to ban me, internally admitted that the Whisper messages were not sexting. And two, Twitch's trust and safety team, the same employees that decided to ban me, internally acknowledged that the Whispers did not constitute child sexual abuse material CSAM.
And I really have to preface that he said this. I'm not admitting myself by talking about this, that I believe to be 100% true, because he doesn't really show any proof of this. And when this is a story that sounds, pretty compelling for his case, and it just came out of nowhere, you do need some evidence, a tiny bit, especially when the story is already off to an emotional start, just being very aggressive. And at this point, it does feel like, this whole, story that he's putting out does feel like a complete 180 to the confession he made before. And he responds to that by saying like how, when he said inappropriate, he really meant like the best case scenario, by making inappropriate jokes that were later then taken like out of context and used against him. When in reality, if you actually remember his confession, he never mentioned anything about jokes, and that the only real thing he said was that, fuck you to everyone calling me a pedophile. But he never drew the line and saying that it was just jokes. I think he said before, conversations, but of course, when people see, that word, inappropriate, they're gonna imagine like the worst case possible and use that against you, especially if you don't refute it or make a response after that. This next part is somewhat interesting, in the sense that if another person came out after this to like corroborate the story, it would alleviate some of the backlash he's getting from this whole drama. He talked about like how his ex-Twitch partner was the one that persuaded the Twitch user, the minor, to report the whispers to Twitch. Within the team, like I said, the safety team, looked at it and found nothing wrong with it. And in the words that the doc used, he said like how the ex-manager was disappointed by this, and he took the screenshots of the messages, he cropped it to be like, the worst context possible, and sent that to a legal team to be like, oh my god, you have to ban this guy right now. And this legal team, apparently being so lazy and being on holiday, was so appalled by it, they agreed to it, they banned him, they even reported Dr. Respect to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Kids, who since 2020, have done nothing with that report.
The Twitch user tells this ex-Twitch partner manager that they do not want to report anything to Twitch. But this ex-Twitch partner manager encourages the user and even directs them to file a report directly with Twitch, even though the user told him clearly that we never physically met anywhere and that no photographs were exchanged. On June 24th, 2020, Twitch's special operations team receives and reviews the user's report. They find no issues and determine that it did not warrant any further escalation to Twitch's law enforcement response team. But that partner manager, oh boy, did he had it out. He had it out for the two-time. He finds out that no further action will be taken, so what does he do? He personally escalates the report to a friend on the Twitch's LER team. The LER team, remember, that's the Twitch's law enforcement response team. Mind you, this director is on vacation at that time. The LER analyst cherry picks and sends a few targeted excerpts out of context from the whisper messages to this director. Now, if you do this, you can make anyone's messages look inappropriate, even when they aren't. Within less than 1 hour, this LER analyst and his director have made the decision to suspend me from Twitch. Twitch submits a report to NCMEC. You guys all read those little articles, huh? As far as I know, they didn't escalate Twitch's report to law enforcement.
Okay, so overall, from that whole story, there's a lot to unpack. Because then after the story, he moves on to like say how like even Twitch themselves were so lazy, they couldn't even do like an investigation to the actual age of the user. But again, you have to remember, from this whole story that paints him in the best light possible, he doesn't really show any proof that could easily back up the story, when I feel like there should be. I mean, I already believed before that Twitch was, just very incompetent, so I believe the story to be a possibility, but I don't believe it to be 100% true. And you know what? I would find that more credible if he wasn't so unhinged. Because he goes on to talk about like how Twitch do something differently from other streamers because he's too based, too unfiltered, like a very good image of a good family man. So they use this story as a half-baked reason for why they wanted to ban him, just tear him down.
Why did Twitch treat the doc so differently from their other streamers? I mean, outside of the obvious. I mean, just take a look at me. Unfiltered, the realest motherfucker in this industry. 6'8", gorgeous.
In this part, my god, it actually be like the best sign that he has like a massive bias and a huge assumption on why he was banned. And even if you're a huge fan, how can you listen to this and be like, he's definitely in a good mental space, I definitely believe him? Because no matter how diehard you are, I really gonna take his word for everything. Especially when already in the story so far, there's like barely any proof about just anything in general, both on his side and Twitch, because they've showed nothing so far. But moving on, around the 40-minute mark, he throws out like random controversies that Twitch, before in the past, have done nothing. And some of them, you know, sound pretty bad, but he shows no names. I mean, like, I don't use Twitch myself, so some of you guys might know what he's talking about, but for me personally, I would like some context. Especially when before in the stream, he said like how context is very important. The last thing I'll show now was this very good wrap up to this whole story.
People want show the message, release the messages, show the messages. What are we in 2nd grade?
That's a very good response to people asking for proof, which is evidence. Okay, but to wrap up my video, I would have to say like how despite his, you know, his comeback, from his side, it doesn't really make him look better because he looks very, you know, very deluded, very like a grifter. And it doesn't make the story any more clear, because throughout this entire stream, he does seem to forget like how important the confession was, which looked pretty bad, really fucking bad. So you can't really move past that or to just shut it down. And even then, he makes points about like how Twitch didn't do an investigation to look into the age of the user to see if they're actually a kid. But even then, you didn't either. If you found it that important, you could have done it yourself. Best thing I could defend him on was that story that he mentioned like how initially the lawsuit was made by the legal team, which believed the ex-manager, which from his point of view of the dog made it seem like he was a disgruntled employee that had like a vendetta against him. Which, if that story was true, would prove why Twitch never talked about this and why he was brought back, being like a misunderstanding between the legal team, the safety team, and the judge, who at the end of the lawsuit, like, they looked at the messages and found nothing illegal about it. Because if you remember, this whole story was started by Cody Connors, which is like an ex-employee. So it was never mentioned by Twitch himself, just by an ex-employee, just him. So in general, all the dog has to do is just settle down, just relax, and just make a proper response with actual proof. Because if he did, this story might be a little bit different or just better. I still believe that this Twitch user was a minor, but at least in this story that the doc has put out, at least he can make it seem that, what he sent was more so inappropriate jokes, more so than sexting. That would be the best outcome from his point of view, at least.